Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Handy Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters. Sulky, express yourself with Sulky and create with confidence. Brother, it's so easy with Brother at your side. And Quilt Cut, easy fabric cutting for quilters.
Hi, and welcome to Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community. I'm Lori Baker. With me today is Paula Reid, machine quilter and quilting instructor. Welcome, Paula. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you,
I am
Lori.
also a machine quilter, so I'm anxious to learn some tricks.
On a domestic machine?
Yes, on a domestic machine. So, tell me what you're going to show us first of all.
Well, I've got a couple samples here of work that I have done that illustrates this. What I like to do is I like to use my deepest weight, heaviest, most impactful thread first.
Okay.
And that gives you your basic idea.
Okay.
And then from there, you can use lighter threads to create depth. So for instance, in this one, I used a dark green thread to do the actual quilting. I used a lighter thread in a lighter weight as well to do all that micro, teeny tiny stippling. And that way with the lighter thread, it didn't make it real stiff.
Right.
Which it does.
It does, yes.
How that happens. And on this one, I actually did these two in a Cindy Needham class. She's awesome if you get to take from her,
Okay.
do. But what I did was I used a heavier weight, a 40 weight thread for what I call the bones of the work.
Okay.
Then I go ahead and use a slightly lighter thread for what I call the muscles. And then the lightest weight thread would be the makeup.
Oh, okay.
So in this one, the gold would be the bones, the feathers, that would have been the muscles, and then all of the little texture marks are the makeup.
The makeup. So this is what we're doing, right?
This is what I'm going to show today. So here's the bones. Here's the muscles. I added a little accent mark. I kind of snuck those in just because I thought it made the feathers look really nice. And then the outer, that little echo, is the makeup.
Okay, great.
So it's just a different way of looking at it, and I think people remember it when I use that terminology.
Exactly. Okay, so we start out with just a plain old sandwich.
And what I have in the machine now is a metallic thread by Mettler, and it's going to be my darkest thread, and also pretty much my heaviest textured thread.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you use a special bat when you're doing this?
I like to use wool bat.
Okay.
And the wool, I think, really creates a lot of nice texture because if you look at the samples, they look like they have that Italian stuffed work, the trapunto.
Yes.
None of them are done with trapunto because of the wool batting.
Okay.
But I think that's even accentuated more when we do the makeup.
Right,
The makeup
okay.
helps pop it out even more. So to start, when I do all of my free motion quilting, I start by bringing the bobbin thread up. And then grab it and hold on to both of them. And then when I do these, I'm just going to make a little S curve and clip my threads. I think neatness counts. I always clip my threads.
I understand.
And I need my bat scooters. Have you seen these?
I have not seen bat scooters.
These are really kind of fun. What they are is they're made out of a foam, and this is a foam used in sports medicine, so you can hold on to them for hours and they aren't going to hurt you. And I use them pointy side in, and what they do is they hold on to the quilt so that I don't have to. So I use them kind of, I guess you would say, instead of a glove.
Okay.
So I'm going to use them to help me steer. And I'm going to make this S curve, and I'll often move my hands. I'll often make this S curve several times. And the reason I want to do that is because it makes it thicker, so it makes my bones even better. And if you don't trace this accurately, it doesn't really matter because you're going to be going over it again and again. So if I miss it, I don't get excited about that.
Okay.
This is very forgiving.
I like forgiving.
Oh yeah. See, I'll hit it again. As I go down again, I'll hit it. And that'll fill all that in. It's a little bit too long for me to do in one fell swoop here.
So if you were doing this at home and time was not an issue, how many times would you go over the bones part?
Until I really like the look of it. On this one, I think on the final sample, I went over it 5 times.
Okay.
So back, forth, back, forth, back.
Okay.
Okay? There we go. So I've got one that I've already done 5 times. That's a nice S-curve.
Yes, it
I
is.
like that one. Okay, and I'm going to rethread here because I'm going in my descending colors,
Right.
darkness and such.
So you're changing to a lighter thread color?
It's a lighter thread color and it's a different weight. This is a 50 weight and it's a lighter thread color because I don't really want to take away from the bones. You know, the muscles are a different kind of a look. This is really fun. I had a lot of fun picking the colors, and if you stay in one color family, I love this needle threader.
I do too.
This is, I could watch that all day long, every thread, every time. I love it. And I don't pull the loop out too often either.
Right.
So I could go ahead and do start the feathers on that one. There we go. I love to do freehand feathers. I've always liked them. And I think I found that when I first started freehand feathers, I was sort of scared of it. You know,
right.
oh gosh, can I really do them freehand? And then my thought was, well, I've done an awful lot of them with stencils. So maybe I've developed that muscle memory.
Right.
If I'm lucky, I've developed that muscle memory, and that's the way it turned out to be. So I was pretty excited about that. So I'll start putting these feathers in. Put in feather 1, come back up, put in feather 2, come back up. And they aren't all perfect and they aren't all the same size, and I found when I do this it really doesn't make any difference. That they all kind of, I think the eye blends them as you keep going with it.
Okay, yes, that makes
so,
sense.
Yeah, and so if they're imperfect, it isn't as much of a problem. And I just go back to the stem, back to the stem, back to the stem. You know, every time I do this, I think they all look different.
But it's beautiful.
Well, when I'm off like this isn't rocket science. You know, I feel that it's anchored here, it's anchored up there. When I get back online, I can just pull those stitches out.
Right, the ones that
Sure.
aren't quite perfect.
Sure, and it'll actually look really, really good. And then when I get to the top, what I usually do is just go right back down that stem. That wasn't a terrific one. I just go right down the stem, and then I can just continue on and do the other side.
Okay.
Okay? And I can actually fix that. If I want to play around with that, I could put like a little curly cue out there to give it a little more dimension.
Yes.
You know, and I think that's fun too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Rethreading again. This is my threading practice.
So again, you're changing color and weight.
Yes. And the reason I'm doing that is because now I'm going to put in those little accent marks.
Okay. The veins in the leaves.
Would you call them veins? Yeah, I guess yes, that's a good way to put it. I've never really called them anything before.
Just accent.
Yeah. Here's one. You know, I like to do the feathers from the bottom up. I just find it easier to see. I like to do accent marks from the top down. Absolutely no good reason. It's just the way it feels good to me. I didn't thread it. There we go. Push the magic button.
And there you go.
Yep. Love that. And then get a little more thread here. Okay. So I'll start at the top. I'm bringing the needle up with a different kind of a petal that Brother has now. And so I can actually do it from the petal rather than having to do it on the screen. Let's get under here and get that out. Then you can make these as long as you want. I've seen them made with little curly cues. You can make them out of the corner, you can make them out of the middle, you can curve them.
But you are doing all one side, and then you're going to come
Back
clear
up
back
and
up
do
the
the others.
stem and do
Right.
the others from the top down also.
But since this is just kind of a play piece, can I show you some other things you could do in
Sure,
there?
absolutely.
You know, rather than just do those little accent marks. You could do, see this little,
A little swirl.
you could do a little swirl. You could do a double accent mark. That looks kind of fun. Then do another one maybe down here. You know, you can do other things. I've seen people do other little feathers inside. So you've got options for how you actually want to do your accent and how you want to bring in that thread. And this particular thread that I've brought in is a variegated thread. So you're going to get a little bit of a different look. You can see when I pull this over here, you're going to get a little bit of a different look.
Oh,
See how
yeah,
this is
I see
lighter and
that.
this is darker? So you get those looks, which I like.
See that.
And now I'm going to go to my lightest thread. So I'm also going to change the bobbin.
So there's a piece with all of the accent marks in place, and
Already
you're going to do
in.
the lightest thread and the kind of the outline around the thing.
And I echo around 3 times, and that just pops it.
Yes.
You know, and you'll see that on the final. And this is a lighter thread yet, just in weight as well
Weight
as color.
as well as
You know,
color.
it's a light pink. It's a 60 weight Mettler silk finish thread. I like the Mettler because I've been able to get like 30 and 40 and 50 and 60, and that gives me a progression of the weights of the thread I want. And there's just a kabillion colors, and 200
Maybe
and
not
some.
quite a billion.
Well, I like to think there are. You know, when you've pulled out every single green and you're trying to
Yes.
decide which ones you want, it kind of feels like a
Yes,
lot.
exactly.
Okay, that's an extra. Here we go.
So you're starting at the bottom again when you're doing the echo.
And you don't have to. Probably the easiest way to do it would be sideways. If you can position your quilt that way when you're doing it on
Right.
a big quilt, because if you do it sideways, you can see. You know, you're
Right,
working
okay.
where you can't see when you're going backwards so much. So probably sideways would be my preferred view if I can position the quilt
Depending
in
on
the
the
machine that
size
way. And
of the
that's what I
quilt.
think is such a nice thing about working on a domestic machine, is that you can position it pretty much any way you want to, and then you can go on to the next piece, you know, the next part of the quilt, and position it in a different direction, and you're still
Exactly.
okay. One more time. There we go. And then I do a pretty tight echo, like about a 1/16 of an inch.
Okay.
And if you do it 2 or 3 times, and I like doing it 3, but I don't have much to grab onto over here, so I'm going to reverse my bats and put the big one in the other hand. Let's do it this way. See, now I'm going to move it. I pretty much stop when I move my hands, because if I just leave the machine running and lift one hand, I have a big mess on my hands.
Okay.
I get a great big old stitch because the machine, you know, the fabric doesn't know you've lifted one hand. It just knows that all of a
Exactly.
sudden there's no security there.
Yes.
There we go.
And are you going to go around the whole thing, and then, so you'll go around the top now and keep going down
I
this
just
side
keep
and
going,
do the
and then I
3?
do it again and do it again until I've got the 3 done.
Awesome.
But this is pretty easy. This is like frosting on a cake. I should find a cake analogy instead of a bones and muscles analogy. What do you think?
What do you think? Yeah, good idea.
Do you have some words for that?
I'd have to think on it a while. Okay, well, I love the idea. And like I said, I am a machine quilter, so
Wonderful.
I think this is a great thing that I can use in playing with my quilts. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're more than welcome, and we're glad you came to watch us as we worked with using thread to create depth.
Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Handy Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters. Sulky, express yourself with Sulky and create with confidence. Brother, it's so easy with Brother at your side. And Quilt Cut, Easy fabric cutting for quilters.